I had always imagined my wedding day would be filled with joy, surrounded by love and celebration. But when I stood there, ready to walk down the aisle, I didn't feel like a bride. I felt like a target. The flowers were beautiful. The music played softly in the background and everything seemed to be in place. But something was off. A storm was brewing, and it wasn't in the sky. It was within my family. I wasn't prepared for what came next. I thought, for once, my family would show up to celebrate me. But no. They weren't there to bless me. They were there to break me. My own parents, the people who raised me, had turned against me in the worst possible way. I could feel it in every breath, every tense moment. They were about to shatter what should have been the happiest day of my life. I'm Isabella, by the way, and I'm 33 years old. I grew up in a picture-perfect town called Brookhaven. To anyone on the outside, my life seemed like something straight out of a Hallmark movie. A big house with white shutters, wreaths on the windows during the holidays, a mother who baked pies, and a father who ran a local construction business. But if you looked a little closer, you'd see the cracks. You'd see how I faded into the background. From the moment my younger sister Mira was born, I was invisible. Mira was everything my parents wanted in a daughter: loud, fashionable, dramatic. She took up all the space, and I became nothing. When she got a paper star in kindergarten, they'd throw a pizza night to celebrate. When I went to the science fair in 8th grade, my mother barely even looked up from her coffee. Mira was the shining star, the golden child. And I was just there, quietly existing on the sidelines. I wasn't unloved exactly, just unseen. I remember being a kid, sketching jewelry designs in the margins of my homework. I dreamed of creating things people would treasure. I showed my mom one of my designs once, a locket with delicate vines and tiny birthstones. She looked at it, smiled faintly, and said, "That's cute, honey, but real people don't wear stuff like that." I remember folding up the paper and throwing it away that night. I learned quickly, my dreams, my desires, my passions, they didn't matter. They belonged to Mira. And so, I became the quiet daughter, the easy daughter, the one who didn't rock the boat, the one who stayed out of the way. I learned how to be invisible. It wasn't like I chose this role, but when you're ignored long enough, you stop trying to be seen. That silence. It became my home. I carried it with me into adulthood. I worked hard at my small handmade jewelry studio, paid my own bills, and started to build a life for myself. But still, to my parents, I was just Isabella, the low-maintenance one. Then, everything changed when I met Oliver. He wasn't like the others. He didn't try to impress me with big gestures or expensive things. He noticed the small stuff, how I tucked my hair behind my ear when I was nervous, or how I traced the rim of my mug when I was deep in thought. For the first time in my life, someone looked at me like I mattered. I wasn't just a background character in someone else's story. I could finally believe that I could write my own. And then, just when I started to think I might finally be seen, everything exploded. I should have known it wouldn't be that easy. The moment Oliver and I picked our wedding date, I felt the shift. I could see it in my mother's tight-lipped smiles and my father's constant change of subject. It wasn't overt, but it was there. The disapproval. They didn't want me to marry on that date. They didn't want me to have my moment, my day. I had no idea how far they would go to take it away from me. It was a week after we sent out the wedding invitations, and I was sitting in my jewelry studio, lost in my work, when my phone rang. I saw my mother's name flash across the screen and I froze. I had a bad feeling. I didn't know why, but something in the pit of my stomach told me this wasn't going to be a normal call. "Isabella, we need to talk," she said, her voice sharp, almost rehearsed. I could tell she'd been rehearsing this conversation. I braced myself. "Sure, Mom. What's going on?" Mira and Travis have decided on a date for their wedding too. They're getting married on May 15th at 2 p.m. at the Grand Haven Hotel. She paused, waiting for me to respond, but I was silent, not sure what she expected me to say. Then the words hit me like a punch. I couldn't breathe for a second. "That's the exact date and time of my wedding," I said quietly, not sure how I was even speaking. Brenda didn't skip a beat. "Well, the hotel is a rare opportunity. Travis's father used his connections and they want to have a big wedding. You're only having a small garden ceremony. This is different." My heart sank. I could already feel the manipulation hanging in the air. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "So, what are you asking me to do? Cancel my wedding?" The silence on the other end of the line was suffocating. Then she spoke again, as if it was the most logical thing in the world. "Sweetheart, Myra's wedding will be attended by important people who matter to our family's reputation. You could always reschedule." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like all the years of being pushed aside, of never being enough, came flooding back. My parents were asking me to give up the one thing that finally mattered to me, my wedding day. I fought to keep my voice steady, my emotions in check, but I could feel the tears threatening to spill. "No," I said firmly. "I'm not changing the date. We've already sent out invitations, booked everything, and this day means something to me. I won't move it." There was a long pause. I could hear my mother's sharp breath on the other end of the line. But she didn't argue. She didn't have to. The damage was done. "Martin and I think you're being selfish," she said coldly. And that was it. The call ended. Just like that. The words echoed in my head. Selfish. For the next few days, everything went eerily quiet. No calls, no messages. It was like I didn't exist again, like I was invisible once more. I had made my decision, but I could feel the distance growing. It was then that I found out about the cancellation. Travis's family had pulled the plug on their engagement. Apparently they were furious that another wedding had been planned at the same time, especially one that was using the same venue. The hotel's exclusivity was everything to them. They made a big public scene, and just like that, Mira's perfect wedding dream came crumbling down. And that's when I received the text from Mira. It was short, just one line. "Hope you're happy. You'll regret this." I stared at the screen for what felt like forever. I wanted to respond. I wanted to explain that none of this was my fault, but I didn't. Because deep down, I knew what was coming. This wasn't just anger. It was something more. It was a threat. And I had a feeling that my sister wasn't going to let this go. But I had made my decision. I had chosen myself, for once. And I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. 3 days passed after the call with my mom. The silence from my family was suffocating. No calls, no texts, no acknowledgement. It was like I didn't exist anymore, just like when I was younger. But then the news broke. Travis's family had canceled the wedding. They were furious that another wedding had been planned for the same time, especially one at the same venue. They'd wanted exclusivity, and they weren't about to share it with anyone. The fallout from that decision was immediate. And just like that, my sister's perfect wedding had crumbled. But instead of owning up to it, instead of accepting any responsibility, Mira found someone to blame. And of course, that person was me. I remember sitting in my studio when I got the text. One line. "Hope you're happy. You'll regret this." The words burned through me. I stared at the screen, feeling my chest tighten. I didn't respond, because I knew there was nothing I could say. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. This was about years of built-up resentment, jealousy, and anger finally spilling over. Mira wasn't just angry that I refused to change my wedding date. She was furious that I'd taken something from her. The one thing she thought was always hers. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I started to hear whispers. Through Ava, I found out that my parents weren't angry with Mira. They were angry with me. They were telling extended family members that I had sabotaged my sister's engagement by refusing to reschedule my wedding. My mother had actually said Isabella could have chosen any other day, but no, she had to prove a point. It was like the rug had been ripped out from under me. Again. They were painting me as the villain, the one who ruined everything. They had turned this whole situation into a narrative where I was the one at fault. But deep down, I knew the truth. I hadn't ruined anything. I'd stood up for myself. For the first time in my life, I had chosen something for myself. And it felt like the whole world was punishing me for it. But I wasn't alone. Oliver stood by me through all of it. When I felt like I was drowning in their manipulation and lies, he was there. His calm presence grounded me. Ava, too. She was the one who reminded me that I hadn't done anything wrong. You stood up for yourself. You didn't let them walk all over you. I'm proud of you, she told me. That meant everything to me. Because in that moment, when my family had turned their backs on me, I had two people who had my back. And as much as their cruelty hurt, I felt something else too. A kind of strength rising in me. I wasn't just going to let them walk all over me again. I wasn't the quiet daughter anymore. I wasn't the easy one. I had a life to live. A life that didn't revolve around their control. And no matter what they said, no matter how much they tried to twist the truth, I wasn't going to let them destroy it. This was my wedding, my moment, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. A few days after the text from Mira, things took a turn I wasn't prepared for. Ava, my closest friend, had heard something at a local spa. She and Mira's former salon assistant didn't know each other well, but they were in the same space, and Ava overheard something that chilled her to the bone. Apparently, Mira wasn't just upset. She was plotting. The assistant mentioned that Mira had bought a chemical spray, something that caused a painful allergic reaction if it was sprayed on the skin. It was meant to be harmless, they said, just uncomfortable for a while. But Mira's goal wasn't to cause a simple inconvenience. She wanted to ruin my day. She wanted to make sure that I paid for not changing my wedding date. When Ava told me what she'd heard, I felt like the ground beneath me had been pulled away. I couldn't believe it. All this time, I thought the worst of it would be the cold shoulder, the guilt trips. But this was different. This wasn't just betrayal. This was sabotage. A part of me wanted to cancel the wedding right then. I considered it. I thought about how easily I could pull the plug, push it all away, and walk away from it. It would be the safe choice. But then, I thought about what that would mean. If I canceled, if I let Mira win, let my parents' control over me hold me back once again, then nothing would ever change. I would always be the quiet daughter, the one who never caused waves, the one who let others dictate her life. But I couldn't do that anymore. I couldn't keep living for other people. I had spent so much of my life trying to please everyone, trying to fit into the mold my family had created for me. I was tired of that. This wedding, for all its imperfections, was mine. It was my statement. It was me saying, I matter. I wasn't just walking down the aisle to marry Oliver. I was walking down that aisle to reclaim my life, to stop being invisible, to stop being the person who always came second to everyone else's needs and expectations. I looked at Ava, and I could see she was just as upset as I was. Are you sure you want to go through with this? She asked, her voice full of concern. But I knew. I didn't need to think about it for long. Yes, I said, my voice steady. I'm going to marry Oliver. I'm not running away from this. If Mira wants to ruin my day, fine. But I'm not giving her the satisfaction. This is my moment, and I'm taking it. It was terrifying, honestly. To know that my own sister was planning something so cruel, and that my parents would probably back her up, it was all too much. But there was something in me now, something I'd never felt before, a kind of resolve that I couldn't ignore. For once in my life, I was choosing myself, and nothing was going to take that away from me. The morning of my wedding arrived with a kind of calm I wasn't expecting. After all the chaos leading up to this day, all the tension, I thought I'd be a bundle of nerves. But instead, there was peace. I stood in front of the mirror in the bridal suite, wearing a simple ivory gown I had chosen myself. No designer labels, no flashy embellishments, just something that felt like me. Ava helped me with my hair, her hands gentle as she pinned the last strands in place. She smiled at me through the mirror. "You look beautiful, Isabella." For the first time in my life, I felt it. I didn't feel invisible or overlooked. I felt seen. I was surrounded by people who supported me, Ava, Oliver, my friends, and everything felt right. Outside, the soft music played as our guests arrived. It was a small gathering, close friends, a few of Oliver's business associates, kind neighbors, who'd been so good to me at the jewelry shop. It wasn't the grand celebration that my family would have wanted, but it was ours. It was exactly what we wanted. But as I took that first step toward the ceremony space, something changed. The hum of engines caught my attention. I glanced out the window and froze. A line of black sedans and luxury cars filled the gravel driveway, their sleek shapes standing out against the peaceful garden venue. Guests in suits and elegant gowns began to step out, all looking like they belonged to some other world. My heart started racing. A gentle knock at the door. It was Eric, Oliver's best friend. His eyes twinkled as he stepped in. "Sorry to crash the moment, but your guest list just got a little more high profile." Before I could ask what he meant, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Oliver's message. "Don't worry. Everything will work out. I love you." As the ceremony began, my heart pounded in my chest. I was walking down the aisle, not with my father. He hadn't even bothered to call me to wish me well, but with Eric by my side. He was the one who had stepped in, offering to walk me down the aisle. And I was so grateful for that. At the altar, I saw Oliver, waiting for me with eyes full of pride. He looked perfect. Everything about that moment felt perfect. And for a second, I forgot all the pain, the betrayal, everything that had led up to this day. But just as I thought I might be able to breathe again, the sound of high heels clicking across the stone path snapped me back to reality. I turned my head, and there they were, Mira, Brenda, and Martin. Uninvited, unannounced, walking right into the reception like they owned the place. Mira's fake smile was the first thing I noticed. She was dressed in a tight black dress, looking like she had just stepped out of some high society event, completely out of place in the intimate setting we'd created. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to remain calm. Ava quickly moved to my side, her hand resting gently on my arm. "Do you want me to call security?" she asked, her voice tight with anger. But I shook my head. No, I wouldn't let them ruin my moment, not today. Mira approached me, her smile never reaching her eyes. "Lovely setup," she said, her tone cold. Very humble. Before I could respond, she leaned in, her voice dropping low enough for only me to hear. "You think you've won, don't you? You should have canceled when we asked you to. You ruined my future. Now I'm going to ruin yours." And then, just like that, she pulled out a small silver spray can and aimed it at my face. My body went cold as I realized what she was doing. The spray hit my skin, and an intense burning sensation spread across my face. Pain erupted instantly, stinging like fire. I gasped, stumbling back, my vision blurry from the pain. My skin began to swell, and the world around me seemed to spin. Guests screamed. Someone dropped a glass. I felt myself falling, but Oliver was there, his arms catching me before I hit the ground. "Call 911, he shouted, his voice frantic. I heard Eric yelling into his phone, telling the dispatcher that it was a chemical attack at the Brookhaven garden venue. But the most gut-wrenching part of all? As I lay there, in agony, unable to even open my eyes without feeling like my face was on fire, I saw it in their eyes. My parents. Mira. They didn't care. They just stood there, indifferent, as if nothing had happened. Brenda calmly dabbed her lipstick with a compact mirror, like she was more concerned with her appearance than the chaos that had just unfolded. "Oh, stop overreacting," she muttered. "She'll survive." But what they didn't expect was that someone had captured the entire incident on video. One of the guests, an attorney from Oliver's business circle, had been filming everything. "It's all on video," he said, holding up his phone. She sprayed her without provocation. "This is assault." The sound of police sirens filled the air, and in the distance, I heard the unmistakable wail of an ambulance. My face burned as the paramedics worked on me. But the most important thing? Mira's plan to ruin my wedding, to destroy my moment, had backfired. She had made a fatal mistake, and now there was evidence. There was nowhere to hide. I don't remember much of what happened after the paramedics arrived. The pain from the spray was intense, and everything felt like a blur. But what I do remember, with perfect clarity, was the moment Mira was arrested. She was standing there, still wearing that cold, smug smile, when the police officer approached her. "Miss, step away from the bride," he said firmly. She looked at him, confused at first, and then irritated. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "It was just a harmless spray." But the officer didn't budge. He was having none of it. "You are under arrest for assault with a chemical substance," he said, cuffing her hands behind her back. As they led her away, her face turned red with rage, her voice rising in protest. "You ruined everything, Isabella," she shouted. "You stole everything from me." I didn't even flinch. I just looked at her calmly, finally free from the grip she'd held on me for so long. "No," I said quietly. "I just stopped letting you step on me." It was only then that I noticed my parents, Brenda, and Martin, standing off to the side completely unfazed. They didn't move to help me. They didn't even try to step in. They just stood there, watching, like they were above it all. But that was the moment I realized. They were part of this too. Mira hadn't acted alone. She wasn't just trying to ruin my day. She had help. She had been encouraged, supported even, by my parents. They had all been complicit in trying to destroy me, but now they couldn't hide behind their shame any longer. The police quickly turned their attention to my parents. There was no escape for them. They too would face consequences for what they'd done. Brenda and Martin were arrested for conspiracy to commit assault, aiding and abetting, and failure to prevent harm. The public shame they had tried to impose on me now fell squarely on them. As I sat in the ambulance, the pain starting to dull, I felt a strange sense of peace. The humiliation, the hurt, the years of being overlooked. It all felt like it was slipping away. For the first time, I wasn't the one being dragged through the mud. I wasn't the victim anymore. Justice had been served, and it wasn't just a court decision. It was something I'd fought for with every ounce of my being. I could feel the weight lifting off me. It was like a giant weight had been removed from my shoulders. I didn't have to carry the burden of their cruelty anymore. They would face the consequences of their actions, and I would finally have my peace. If my story moved you, if you've ever had to fight for your peace, share your thoughts in the comments. Your support means everything. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear more stories of strength, survival, and reclaiming your life. The day of the trial arrived, and I stepped into the courtroom with a calm I didn't know I had in me. I wasn't the broken bride anymore. I wasn't the daughter who had spent her whole life being overlooked and ignored. I was standing there as a woman who had finally reclaimed her dignity. I had faced so much over the years, but this moment was mine. I wasn't going to let the weight of my past crush me. Not anymore. Oliver stood beside me, his presence a steadying force. He had always been my rock, but here, in this courtroom, his support felt like more than just love. It was justice. He testified with a calm fury, his voice unwavering as he spoke about how deeply this betrayal had affected us both. I could see the anger in his eyes, but there was also a tenderness, a fierceness that made me feel safe, that made me believe everything would be okay. When it was Mira's turn to speak, she tried to downplay everything. She tried to make it seem like it was just some kind of joke, some harmless prank that had gotten out of hand. But the evidence was overwhelming. The video, the testimony from Ava, the chemical analysis of the spray. There was no denying what she had done. Then, it was my turn to take the stand. As I stood there, looking out at the judge, I felt my body tremble. Not from fear, but from the weight of everything I had carried for so long. The years of emotional neglect, the years of being ignored, of being the silent daughter, the one who never caused waves. I wasn't that woman anymore. I looked the judge in the eyes and said, I didn't just survive a chemical attack. I survived years of emotional neglect, years of being treated like I didn't matter. I stood up for myself for the first time in my life, and this is the price I paid. The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. I wasn't asking for sympathy. I wasn't looking for validation. I was simply telling the truth. And for the first time, I felt the power of my own voice. When the judge delivered the verdict, it felt like time stopped. Mira was sentenced to 5 years in prison. My parents, Brenda and Martin, were sentenced to 2 years in county jail each, along with hefty fines. It was a moment of incredible triumph, a moment where justice was finally served. It wasn't just about the attack. It wasn't just about the physical pain I had endured. It was about everything. About the years of manipulation, the lies, the betrayal, and knowing that finally, they would face the consequences of their actions. As I walked out of that courtroom, I didn't feel defeated. I didn't feel like a victim. I felt free. Free from the emotional chains that had bound me for so long. I had spent so many years trying to please my family, trying to make them see me, trying to earn their love. But today, I realized that their love would never come. And that was okay. Because I didn't need it. I had built my own life. I had created my own happiness. And that was all that mattered. I wasn't just a survivor anymore. I was reborn. A woman who had finally found her voice. And I would never let anyone take that away from me again. After everything that had happened, Oliver and I decided to take some time for ourselves. We needed to breathe, to step away from the chaos that had surrounded us for so long. So we went to Italy. It wasn't a big, extravagant trip, just 2 weeks along the Amalfi coast, in small villas with flower-draped balconies, where the air smelled of fresh basil and lemons, and the streets echoed with laughter. It was peaceful, in a way I hadn't known I needed. We spent our days wandering through markets, strolling by the sea, and dancing barefoot on tiled patios under strings of warm yellow lights. There were no reporters, no family drama, no courtrooms. Just us, Just the quiet, the calm, the freedom. It felt like a new beginning, a fresh start. We were able to just be, without the weight of anyone else's expectations on us. For the first time in a long time, it was our happiness. And that was everything. When we returned home, I felt different. It was like I was stepping into my life, for the first time, unburdened, with a clear sense of who I was. I reopened my jewelry studio, but this time, it wasn't just about selling pieces. It was about creating something that reflected my journey, my strength. I named my new collection the Resilience line. Each piece told a story, not just of struggle, but of triumph. Of finding strength when the world tried to break you. Of standing tall when it felt like you were always meant to be small. Poured everything into it. And the response? It was incredible. People resonated with the collection, with the story behind it. My work was featured in a regional magazine, and soon orders started coming in from all over the country. It was more than I'd ever dreamed of. It wasn't just about the jewelry. It was about what it represented. It was about reclaiming my life, my dreams, my voice. Looking back now, I can hardly recognize the woman I used to be, the one who was afraid to speak up, to stand up for herself. I had been defined by my family's limitations, by their neglect and their favoritism. But that was the past. Now, I'm defined by my own choices, my own strength, my own success. I'm no longer invisible. I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm thriving. Thank you for watching. If you've ever had to reclaim your life, share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more empowering stories like this one. As the video ends, you see me standing strong, side by side with Oliver. We're not perfect, but we're happy. We're at peace with who we are, together, and apart from everything that tried to hold us back. We've built something real, and it's ours.